I think we're live. So, hi everyone. For the ones who don't know me yet, I am Karim Nemr, co-founder and chief business officer of PXL Vision. I would like to thank you very much for joining us today. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this fireside chat, really focused on the future of digital identity in Switzerland, the Swiss eID. We will cover the basics on what the eID is, how we got to where we are today, right? What the challenges and the opportunities the eID brings to the Swiss economy and the society. I am super excited and I feel very privileged to have two of the most qualified people I know joining us on this topic. Allow me to introduce you my guests, Michael Doujak, product manager from Ergon. Mike has more than 20 years of experience in identity management and technical background from ETH and many things more. And joining him is Rolf Rauschenbach with a very long title, so Deputy Head eID Unit and Communications Officer, eID, from the Federal Office of Justice, FOJ, or in short, also known as Mr. eID. So both of our guests represent different yet very complementary perspectives on digital identity, from the private sector with Mike, to public infrastructure development from Rolf. Together, they will help us understand how Switzerland is navigating through this challenging landscape of digital trust, privacy, and user experience in the digital identity space. Also, they will give us answers to the questions around the eID, which may have been burning on our tongue already for quite a while. We will have some time at the end for Q&A, so please feel free to use the Q&A function, maybe not the comments, but the Q&A function, so we have everything in one place. To ask your questions along the way, and feel free to really challenge our experts here on the topic as well. We're also recording the session, so feel free to share it after that with your colleagues who couldn't join. So let's get started. Mike, maybe can you introduce yourself just in a couple of sentences and tell us what's your business with the eID and why are you here today?
Well, thank you, Karim, for having me here on this fireside chat. I'm obviously lacking a fireside, but that's okay with the weather as it is right now. We're doing fine. So you asked me on what I'm doing with the eID. Well, I am a product manager for an identity and access management system called Ergon IAM. And we feel that our product is ideally positioned to actually deal with these kind of identities, not only to receive them, analyze them, extract information from them, but also create some and issue them to the people and put them into their wallets. And with that in mind, we're also a member of Open Banking Project, where we're working closely with the financial industry on finding solutions and use cases for the eID, but also other use cases. And we're also a member of DIDAS, which is the Digital Identity Association Switzerland. And there is basically a lot of people in that organization that are interested in the eID and also in self-sovereign identities. So this is, in a nutshell, why I think that the eID is important for us as a business, but also for Switzerland as a whole.
Thank you very much. So, Rolf, please tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to become Mr. eID? And also, please tell me why you actually don't like to be called Mr. eID.
Okay, well, so first of all, so thank you from my side for the invitation to be able to talk to you and your guests. So why don't I like to be called Mr. eID? I mean, it's just a bit pretentious. There are so many people involved in that, and I definitely have a very, let's say, public role in that, but I am definitely not the only one. So that is why I try to keep a little bit low profile in that sense. Otherwise, I have joined the federal government about 3 years ago as communications officer. That is still my main role. I've been working on identity topics before in the private sector, not as long as Mike, but I have a little bit of understanding also on the technical side. But please bear in mind, by training, I'm a social scientist, a political scientist.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So if you look back a little bit, I think it was 2021, March, the Swiss citizens have made a decisive statement when they rejected the proposed eID law a couple of years ago. I think it was primarily due to concerns about data privacy and private sector involvement. So people said, okay, we don't trust the private sector in that regards. Since then, the Swiss government has been, and you and the team obviously have been developing a new approach, right? So Rolf, you've been leading the communication efforts around the new approach, which supposedly prioritizes privacy, security, and citizen trust, the key pillars, but also state control. So can you maybe tell us a little bit what you and your team have been up to since 2021? What is really being built? Who is involved? You mentioned that there's an entire team behind it, right? And not only. And where are we with the Swiss ID? Swiss eID, sorry.
Okay, that is a very open question. I could
Yes.
fill the rest of our session with an answer. So I try to be really short. So yes, based on this rejection of the initial law, there has been made initially a public consultation on what actually is desired, because a no is just a no. And based on this initial consultation, we have been now working on a new solution, obviously with the state, the federal government in the driver's seat, with a new concept, a new architecture inspired by self-sovereign identity, the self-sovereign identity philosophy, let's put it that way. I would not say our solution is 100% self-sovereign. That would be a contradiction itself, being from the state. But nevertheless, and we have advanced already quite far. As you mentioned, there is a law that has been passed in the parliament that will now be challenged at the ballot, which is perfectly fine. That's a constitutional process. And in parallel, we have been also working already on the technical solution with a number of iterations. We have launched a public test environment about a month ago. We call it public beta, where basically the whole solution is already available, not yet in the final version, not yet with productive data, obviously, but available for everybody to be used. And maybe just one sentence on the process. Due to this quite strong results in the initial public vote, the Federal Council has decided to also do a new approach in terms of how we communicate, how we collaborate with each other, and we have been really trying to be as transparent and participatory as possible.
Good, thank you very much. You already answered a couple of some future questions I was planning to ask, but I'll dig deeper in a bit. Now, in Switzerland, there have been already a couple of attempts for an eID concept or wallets. We had the Swiss ID, I think with French Swiss. We also have the Swiss ID, and neither of them really managed to reach critical mass. So what lessons were taken from the past on your side, and what will be different this time?
Okay, so yes, it's absolutely correct that there have been already a number of initiatives by different actors, and these actors then have changed, or the governance of some of these solutions have changed. But also the world has changed. The digital realities have changed, and therefore it's tempting but not totally useful to compare past initiatives with the current one. However, the current proposal really, the first lesson was that the Swiss citizens want a solution provided by the state, by the federal government. And this is now definitely the case. Who looks at the proposed law, who looks at the current solutions, will see state and the federal government all over the place. So that is one thing. A second topic is that so far you have been mentioning mainly the electronic identity, and definitely that is very important. But the Federal Council has decided to open this infrastructure, which is required to actually run this electronic identity for other use cases, both for public authorities, but also for private applications. Meaning that the electronic identity, which will be or would be, let's still be in the conditional, would be a so-called verifiable credential, would be just one of many other verifiable credentials. From a technical point of view, if I prove my identity, or if I prove my university degree, or if I prove my ability to drive a certain car, or if I prove the fact that I am a member of a association or a client of a company and so on. From a technical point of view, these are basically the same statements. And that is why the Federal Council has decided to open this so-called trust infrastructure also for other applications. And by doing so, we hope to somehow shortcut this egg and hen problematic, that people don't use it because there are not many applications, and there are not many applications because the people don't use it. So by allowing all kinds of different applications and use cases, we believe that we will be able to trigger a dynamic which will be favorable for the use of this infrastructure.
We'll come to the adoption topic, I think, a little bit later as well, and what's needed. But first, Mike, what's your take? Does Switzerland really need an eID?
Yes. If you want to do digital transformation, and not just digitalization, but really digital transformation, then you need identities. And identities, of course, to me, as an IAM specialist, is not just the eID. And as Rolf already pointed out, what we're getting from Switzerland is not just the eID, but we get a trust infrastructure. And to emphasize that point, I would like to make an example of what is actually happening here right now. In 1840, 1850, there was the first train line being built in Switzerland. Well, actually, it was the second, if you count D1 to Strasbourg, but Strasbourg is not in Switzerland, so it's not entirely Swiss. So Zurich to Bern was the first one. And it was called the Spanish Brötli-Bahn. And there's a reason behind that, because actually there is a bakery in Baden, or there was at that time, that made these Spanish Brötli. And the rich families in Zurich, they really like those brötli for their breakfast. So they ordered their employees, or one of their employees, to go down to the main station. At that time, it was just the only station, was not yet the main station, down to the station and get some of that bread for their breakfast. So what the eID is doing is basically, they're the Spanish brötli, right? They're what we want. That's what we see. That's what we get. It's one of the use cases. What we're actually building, or Rolf and his team are building, is an infrastructure that is the train infrastructure. And if we're looking at it today, then we see that the entire Switzerland is covered by this train infrastructure. But it started with the Spanish Brötli-Bahn and with the Spanish Brötli, the eID at that time. And I think what's happening right now is kind of a similar thing. We're starting to build something that is going to be an infrastructure for a lot of things. Rolf already alluded to that, that we're going to have memberships, we're going to have tickets on that, we're going to have all kinds of different proofs. And the most important thing is that we have those proofs under our control. And if you're asking me, do we need it? Yes, definitely. This is the type of identity management that we want to have, and it's the type of infrastructure that we want to build, because it's going to allow us to implement a lot of use cases, and it's going to make all our lives easier.
Mm-hmm. So you both mentioned the word infrastructure a couple of times. If we talk about eID, at the surface, or on the surface, what people see and recognize, it's the wallet. It's an app like the SWIU here. But what's under the hood is obviously the infrastructure, as you brought the nice analogy. So Mike, do you agree with the technological approach that the eID is taking in terms of infrastructure? Or if, let's say, you had the choice, like what would you have done, for example, a little bit differently, maybe just also from a private sector perspective versus now government owned or government, let's say, led?
Number one is I've been asked time and again by Rolf Rauschenbach and the eID team on whether I like the approach, and I was able to give feedback. So if I would be standing here now and say, no, the infrastructure really sucks and it's a totally wrong decision, I would have been a fool, because I could have raised my voice a lot earlier. No, I think they're doing the right thing. And they're also very careful on focusing on one thing, that's the eID right now, to push that out, to build the infrastructure so that the eID works. And once that's done, I'll hope they'll also be able to progress further and add additional functionality, add more features and bells and whistles. But right now, I really like the infrastructure, and I especially like the paradigms that are being implemented, the privacy preserving functions, where they're really making sure that I'm under control of my identity and not the state. The state doesn't know what I'm doing with my identity. If I'm presenting it somewhere, the state is not informed about it. And I think they're doing all of the things right that they can at this point in time with the technology we have.
So privacy, big word. We heard self-sovereignty as well before. I'll come back to that. But before we do, so yes, we can use the eID to buy or order digital Spanish Brötli. What else can we do with it? So where do you see the biggest application areas that also maybe drive the adoption of the eID? And what problems does the eID actually solve for, on one hand, the users, the citizens, but also maybe the businesses? Just very short in a couple, like what's your top applications?
You're asking this Mike or myself?
Still Mike, sorry. I'm still asking this
Mike. I think one of the things is the reliability of the data that is built into these credentials. So the eID is actually issued by Switzerland. So the data in there is trustworthy. If I have a bank account credential issued by my bank, then the IBAN number in that credential is trustworthy because it's been issued by my bank. And they're also, and now we're talking about the infrastructure, building something into the infrastructure so that I can actually be sure that the credential is actually being issued by my bank. And if I present it to someone, that someone can be sure that this is really a credential that was issued by a bank. So what we're building here is trust, and that's why they actually call it the trust infrastructure. And that is the reason why I think this whole thing is so important, and it's going to change the way we do things in the future.
So looking at trust, another big word, I agree, that's kind of the key value that we're selling here basically, or that we're trying to achieve. Now maybe both, or maybe first with Rolf. So I would like to hear both opinions actually. But do you think a government issued identity is inherently more trustworthy than a private solution? Because I mean, the citizens believe that the government can be trusted more. That's kind of the outcome of the vote. What do you believe, just from a more maybe also technical perspective? I mean, is government issued by nature more trustworthy than a private solution?
I think this is really a relevant question, but I would like to answer the following way. On the one hand, you can say, well, an electronic identity is a technical construct, something, code, some service and whatever. And you could also say, the electronic identity that is used in Switzerland compared to the electronic identity in a different country, from a technical point of view, maybe the same thing. The same codes, the same service, or similar stuff. However, we really have to be aware of the fact that an electronic identity is much more than technology. In the end, it is a social, a cultural phenomenon around which we have also this concept of trust, which is basically a psychological concept. It is something that you feel. And there, obviously, different countries, different historic contexts, different cultures have different perceptions of the state. How we view the Swiss state is different as to how a Chinese views the Chinese state. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. we can have this discussion, but that's not the moment. What I'm trying to say is we talk about something which is much more fundamental and complex. And it seems to me, because right now I'm talking or I'm speaking as the information officer, not as the private citizen. It seems to me that in 21, the majority of Swiss people said, we trust more in the state than in private companies. As we get our Swiss passport from the federal government, we also would like to get the electronic version from the federal government.
If I may just on this point, I mean, they didn't vote for the government, but against the private sector, against the concept in that sense. So do you believe that the vote was unsuccessful because they didn't trust the contents, or, you know, they were afraid or concerned about privacy? Or did they vote against it just because they don't like change, or because they're afraid of change?
Okay, so I agree. If you only look at the result of the vote, then it is just no against an eID. However, if you look at what was the motivation to actually request a referendum, then it is very clear that the groups that have requested this initial referendum were very much in favor of an eID by the state. And by the way, they are now also in favor of this new proposal and are not fighting it anymore, at least most of them. So that is from the point of view of who has requested the referendum in 21. The other part is that there have been, how do you say, investigations, you know, there has been made research with people who have voted back then, and there also the majority clearly stated we would like to have an eID, but one's issued by the state. So for that reason, I feel quite comfortable in stating this. On top of that, the new proposal has a political mandate, which has been given support by all parties in the parliament. Also, if you look at the final approval of the eID law, it has been widely approved by all, the whole spectrum, political spectrum in both chambers of the parliament. So in that sense, it seems to be the case that there is an appetite for an identity and one issued by the state.
Okay, thanks. Mike, maybe your opinion on this as well. I guess, again, I mean, as Rolf said, from a technical perspective, there's no reason why the private sector couldn't bring or develop the same code, right? So trust is very subjective in that end. I think we are very lucky to live in a country where we can, or actually do, trust the government. I think there are different examples in the world as well. But maybe just your take on this as well, Mike.
Well, let me start with I voted no in 21. Because to me, it was the problem that a privately issued identity compared to a identity card or a passport, they're not on the same level. They're not seeing eye to eye. And what I wanted from the state is basically an electronic version of the passport or the identity card. And that has to be state issued. If then the state issues some private contractors to actually produce it, I mean, they're not going to build their own server hardware or their own cloud service or anything. I mean, the eID team is not going to do that. So there will be third parties, the private sector will be involved. But having the lead and keeping the lead to me was something that is important, because it's one of the services that I expect my country to provide me with. And I think a lot of people felt the same way than I do. And as Rolf already elaborated, this is what we are now going to get. So I have an easy feeling about the referendum, and I have a good feeling about third quarter 2026.
Good, very happy to hear that. Now again on the topic of privacy and trust. So you mentioned, Rolf, before self-sovereign, you know, as a word. Biggest critics, I would say, of a government issued eID, they always bring up self-sovereign identity as kind of the critical point. You mentioned the philosophy was taken into consideration, or what was applied, but obviously not fully self-sovereign. Can you maybe explain what self-sovereign identity really means now in the context of the Swiss eID. Does this mean that the government cannot revoke your eID, or what's kind of the implications for the citizens, and what does it entail?
Okay, before I address your question directly, I just would like to say very briefly also, what my role is in the current situation. Obviously, the referendum has been requested. It has been achieved. We will vote. The date has not yet been decided. That will be communicated in due course. However, the federal administration, and I'm part of the federal administration, is not going to engage in a political debate in the sense of that I say, group A or B says this or that, and this is wrong or whatever. So I would like to respect this political process as it is, but I am not directly engaging in it. Just as a general statement. Now, when it comes to self-sovereign identity, I mean, self-sovereign identity or self-sovereign means already says I, as self-sovereign, as sovereign individual, issue my identity. And I am saying I am Rolf or I'm somebody else. That is obviously not what is going to happen. My parents have decided to give me this name. Then they registered that with the public authorities. And only once the public authorities have actually made the attestation that, yes, this baby has his name and so on, the name became official, and there was obviously some heavy-handed involvement of public authorities, and the same is now true when it comes to the issuing of the electronic identity. It is the federal government which issues this identity, not private persons. In the cypherpunk context, you have a concept like that, perfectly fine, but that is not how a government works. Let's put it that way. So that, to simplify, I would say is the main difference between our approach and the full-fledged self-sovereign identity philosophy. Now, why we still refer to this concept? As one example, once the electronic identity is issued, it is issued to you, to your smartphone, to your wallet, and the electronic identity exists only on your device. We, from the government, we have the data, but we don't have the full electronic identity, because the full electronic identity of you also contains cryptographic material from your device, to which we as government have no access. And for that reason, it will be only you with your device who will be able to actually present your electronic identity. And this is a self-sovereign aspect of it. It is not the full Monty, but it is an aspect of it. And there are a number of other examples how we implement this idea, but I think I leave it at that for the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much. Makes absolute sense. So I think I heard voices which are concerned, that the eID will become mandatory. I heard it's not going to be mandatory, right, to have an eID. But still, people are concerned that certain services will then be only available potentially through an eID. So how do you ensure that the eID will be inclusive and preventing digital exclusion, be it elderly, non-digital natives, or people which that just don't trust the system nevertheless or don't want to? So how do you deal with that? Rolf, maybe also on that.
Yeah, sure. So the law is very clear. It states that whoever would like to get a eID can get one, if you're Swiss or if you're a Swiss resident with a foreign permit. But it doesn't say you must get one.
Yeah.
So the law is clear. The eID is voluntary. The state, in providing services, has to accommodate everyone, people with an eID and people without an eID. That is also very clear. And in any case, there are always use cases and applications which have to be offered also to people who are not eligible for an electronic identity, but who are still in the right of getting these services. So it is very difficult to come up with examples where it actually would make sense to say an eID is mandatory, because we would exclude people anyway, which the state cannot do. So from a governmental point of view and from a point of view of offering public services, it is clear that an eID cannot be mandatory, or if in some use cases it would be mandatory, we would need a legal basis. This legal basis does not exist today. If in the future somebody would like to create such a legal basis, then it will be again subject to the optional referendum, and the people could veto it at the ballot as they might do now in full.
Now, looking at the use case and application areas, as you mentioned, I mean, big driver for adoption, in my opinion, are not the government services, or not only the government service. I only do have to do, unfortunately, I only have to do a tax declaration once a year. So it's the business use cases and the B2C use cases, right? So, Mike, from a private sector perspective, and talking to the players, obviously, so how ready are the banks, the telcos, the insurance, the insurers, and so on to integrate and adopt the national eID system, and maybe what's needed for them to embrace it?
I would say they are getting ready, at least the banks. I already mentioned at the beginning that we, Ergon, are a member of Open Banking Project, and we're doing a workshop series. We just concluded one where we talked about use cases for the eID, and now we started the next workshop series where we're actually trying to implement proof of concepts for the use of the eID. For example, onboarding. Identity proofing, it's something a process that you're probably aware of. And identity proofing is something where the eID could come in handy. It doesn't solve the entire problem, but it could make some parts of the problem easier, more convenient for the customer. And what you get with that, or with the discussion, is of course also the discussion, can we do it exclusively? Can it be eID only? And the answer right now is a definite no. It's a resounding no. We have to keep what we have already in place. We have to offer the customer choice on whether he wants to go the eID way or whether he wants to go the traditional way with video ident, auto ident, and other means. So banks are really, really on track to getting ready for that. Insurance, I haven't heard so much. And other sectors, there's one sector they start slowly but surely starting to wake up to it. The commercial sector, e-commerce, they are thinking about using verifiable credentials, so issued credentials, in order to prevent fraud, to make sure that whoever that returning customer is really the customer that they were talking to. They're talking about other technologies, but I think the eID trust infrastructure could make a very heavy impact in that commercial sector. So that's going to be interesting to see on how that develops and how quickly it will actually be picked up.
So we talked a lot about Switzerland, Swiss eID, obviously, and the Swiss trust infrastructure. Now we do have a lot of people, citizens traveling outside of Switzerland. We have many multinational companies. So how do you see the topic of interoperability with the EU or even global eID systems? Is this something that's considered, or how is it different from the EUDI wallet, for example, or their systems? I mean, let's not go that far, but is there any plan for interoperability with systems outside of Switzerland?
Shall I answer?
Maybe both, whoever's first. But maybe Rolf, yeah.
So okay, Rolf, go first.
It doesn't matter, both.
Sure. So Switzerland obviously is a globalized country with lots of economical, cultural, personal relationships with all over the globe. And this should also be possible in the digital realm. However, at least in the beginning, the electronic identity will not yet be usable as a travel document. The law gives the federal government the ability to negotiate agreements with other countries or institutions such as the European Union for a mutual recognition. However, the law has to enter into force first so that we can start such negotiations. That is on the regulatory level. Now, on the technical level, I can assure you that we are in very close contact with a number of institutions and countries that we are looking what they are doing. They are looking at and observing what we are doing. And I would say overall, we are not far away or far apart, for example, from what the EU is doing. And I would like to make a little bit of a promotion for a conference that we are hosting in Geneva in July, where we will come together with a number of important countries, but also a number of important international organizations and standard development organizations, open source organizations, to actually talk about interoperability. In the long overall, this will be a monumental task. And it is, I think, very helpful to start this discussion already now. But this will be a process which will still take a little bit of time. And maybe just while addressing this topic, I would like also to just draw the attention to the fact that the electronic identity has implications or is based on a very deep tech stack. You know, we can talk about the wallet that we are now preparing or the infrastructure that we are preparing, but then this whole thing is running on smartphones provided by private companies. It is run on a telecommunications infrastructure and so on, and all these different aspects play into the overall performance, overall privacy, and so on of this product. So there will be still a lot of work, even once we have launched the ID, to further enhance ideas such as privacy, efficiency, usability, interoperability. But we are definitely working on that.
I think we could probably talk for a few more hours on the topic. I have many more questions. It would be time for questions and answer. Since we only have one question, maybe we just answer that, and then I maybe have more, unless no one else has. But really, this is the chance to ask the experts. Please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. So we have one question. I think it was touched already mostly, but so will there be a disadvantage for people who do not have an eID? So I think you pretty much answered the question, but just from a, let's say, go-to-market perspective or an adoption perspective, so will there be the carrot or will there be a stick? Let's say, if I translate the question into my words, yeah. So will there be a stick if you don't have an eID?
No, there won't
be. What I'm seeing in the private sector, no. Basically, the private sector, all the opinions of the people involved I've heard so far are clearly indicating that the customer will decide what they want to use, and they will basically get the user experience that particular service offers. And I'm talking a lot to banks, and you know how it is with billing. Even the yellow booklet on the post office probably still works, even though it's 150 years old. So if you decided that this is the way how you want to pay your bills, then they will allow you to do that. And the eID or the technology introduced with the eID is not going to change that fundamentally.
So we got another question from Bernie. Hi, Bernie. We live in a rapidly changing world in which sanctions are also imposed on companies. Will the state restrict the use of smartphones after an eID has already been stored on them?
hold on, I have to reread this question. Will the state restrict the use of smartphones after an eID has already been stored on them? I mean, that would, frankly, I don't quite understand this question because
maybe.
Yes.
Maybe I can help with the question. The way I interpret it is, will there be security implications because you install the Swio wallet or the eID on your phone? Will somehow that change the policy on how your device is going to interact with you and not allow you to do certain things?
I'm not aware of such a mechanism.
Neither am I. I've never heard anything in that direction, and I've been talking to quite a few people. So no, there is no intention to limit you. There is only the intention to basically say that the smartphone has to have certain technical capabilities, which today in Switzerland is probably only about 90% of the smartphones, but we still have another 1.5 years to go forward. So that 90% will probably increase. And that has to do with handling cryptographic material in hardware only and not being able to copy or steal that cryptographic material. So again, it's a regulation that the eID team has been making that you could say is kind of limiting the use, but on the other hand, it's for security purpose, and I fully understand and support that security purpose. I think it's the right move, and that's the only limitation I know.
Yes, and maybe just to add to that, basically, it is always the user who is contacting us if he or she wants something. We cannot establish, automatically a connection with a smartphone to somehow do something on your smartphone. It is always your smartphone which is initiating this communication channel.
So the next question, thank you very much. The next question goes again in the area of adoption. So I think we asked the question before with half answer, I would say. But what are the let's say the top 3 use cases from the private sector which will drive the engagement to support the eID? Yeah, whoever wants.
Well, I think one of the primary use cases that is going to drive adoption of the eID or the technology is going to be costs. I have an example, the health insurance change. At the end of every year, because premiums increase every year, we have something like more than 1 million people changing their health insurance. If we could do that with verifiable credentials, then basically I would go to the new insurance, present my eID, get a new contract, go to the old insurance, present my eID and the new contract, and basically cancel the old contract. I could do all of that digitally within 1 or 2 minutes, no letters sending back and forth, no tedious other processes, and the insurance companies would save a lot of money because the manual processes of verifying things would fall apart. So this is the type of use cases that are going to make it for the private sector because they can save money and they can improve the user experience. Now, leaving a health insurance is probably not something that a health insurance wants to make more convenient for you, but if they want to have the adoption, the advantage of getting new customers on board in the easy way, then they probably have to take both the good and the bad of that particular solution.
Maybe just one last question, then I think we're pretty much out of time, but it's an interesting one. So when will it be available on the mobile wallet? So Apple Wallet, Samsung Wallet, if at all?
Okay, so it is already available now in a beta version. If you would like to test the wallet now, you can download the Swio app, and you can also get a what we call beta ID to try it out. The productive system will be launched if it does not fail at the ballot later this year in the 3rd quarter of next year, 26.
I think the question, so thank you very much. That's great. I think the question was more related to not as part of an independent app, but as part of the actual Apple Wallet or Samsung Wallet. If I understand the question correctly.
The eID can only be ordered with the wallet provided by us, However, you can store the eID also in third-party wallets if they use our standards. It is not yet totally sure if that will be possible from the get-go or a little bit later, but the law foresees that third-party wallets will be allowed.
Okay, so we need to ask this question rather Apple and Samsung, basically.
Well, if Samsung is adopting our standards, yes,
exactly.
then of course. Okay. What I can say is in the context of public beta, already two third-party wallets have been presented last year in our participation meeting from Swiss companies, Botivis and Ubic. They have already integrated our standards into their third-party wallets.
Mm-hmm. Great. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, or we ran out of time already. Yeah, I would like to thank you very much for being here and answering the questions, Mike and Rolf. Thank you also for all the participants in joining. This was recorded, so we will provide all the information later on the event page where you can find it. And yeah, that being said, I wish everyone soon a very relaxing weekend, and thanks a lot.